Hey, what's going on, my friends? And welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Victor, and I help people navigate through their spiritual awakening process. So, real quick before I begin, my friends, can everybody hear me? Just maybe give me a 1 in the comments if you hear me okay. Only a few people on as of this moment. I'm going to trust that it's okay. So, today's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to be sharing with you some things about this month in general, about the January energies. But also, after that, the main reason I wanted to talk to you now is to connect. I'm returning to YouTube in a pretty big way. And quite frankly, I want to see what's been going on. How can I help you? What kind of videos are you going to be interested in? And we'll talk a little bit after this brief energy update message. Okay. So I have a few things to share about the January energies. Number one is that it's a phenomenal time to make big progress on your dreams, on your goals, on your purpose, on the things that excite you and resonate. You might feel the energy is quite potent and compelling and forward moving. And it's just an excellent time to take that imperfect action, because we're never going to have all of our ducks in a row. And that's one of the things that stopped me for a very long time. I've shared in other times that before getting onto YouTube, it was literally a 6-year period before I actually began. From the time I knew I wanted to make YouTube videos to the time I actually started putting myself out there was a 6-year gap. And I allowed the imperfections to stop me. I allowed my insecurities, my self-doubts, my blocks, if you want to call them that. I had all this stuff that made it very difficult to move forward. And my mind could easily justify my inaction because it said, well, this is not right yet. It's not the right timing, yada, yada, yada. But what I found is 6 years later, when basically the universe forced me into my calling, which is what's happening with a lot of you right now, what I found is that those blocks were still there. I was just as insecure, just as in my head, just as doubtful. And if anything, I was worse off because I had done so much inner work and I thought I'd be further along. And I found that creative expression, it comes with the blocks. Blocks are part of it. They really are. Ask any creator and they will tell you they're not always on, they're not always in their flow, and there was no perfect time to begin. And I'm going to use my wife briefly as a huge inspiration, something she just did the other day that I think might inspire you guys to really go forward as best you can. So the other day, my wife was invited on to my good friend Aaron Dowdy's channel to do a live rose ceremony. There was like 400 something people on there. And it was a big deal for Patty. I'm kind of used to that thing. So was Aaron. Patty is not. So she was nervous. She was planning all week. And she really was hoping it would go well. Well, guess what? It didn't go well at all. There was 1,000 random, unusual problems that she faced. The first one was when we first tuned on, for whatever reason, my computer had no sound. We couldn't hear anything. And it was like nothing with the settings. It's some kind of glitch. So we quickly turned off mine and we brought up her much less lesser quality computer that we finally connected. And then when it came time for Patty to sing, what she does in her ceremony is that she sings and she plays an instrument. She'll drum, or she'll play a rattle, or a singing bowl. Those are her like go-to instruments. But there's a button on Zoom that you press that allows the audio to pick up both frequencies, the voice and then the sound from the instrument. Well, that button was nowhere to be found for some reason. So inevitably, the audio quality was horrible. It would pick up either the drum or her voice, not both, mixed in with weird distortion energies, to the point where people were commenting saying, the sound is horrible. You got to do something. Please stop. So I came in, I snuck in because I was watching, and Patty's drumming away, totally oblivious to the horrible quality it's coming out as. And I'm like in the corner trying to fix it, right? And as I'm trying to fix it desperately, I ended the meeting. And I kicked everybody out. Of Aaron, this is Aaron, my friend. It's not even mine. Aaron's meeting. And I kicked everybody out. And I was like, oh my God, what have I done? So I called Aaron up, like, bro, I'm so sorry. And they got back on. We finally got back on. And we did lose about, 50 to 100 people. They were like, the hell with this. So it was just not going well. And finally we got back on, and we still didn't resolve the audio. We just didn't know what to do. We know now. But anyway, Patty said, you know what? I'm just going to do my best. I'm going to flow with it. I'm going to do my best. And that's what she did. I was nervous. Aaron was sort of in a good space. Patty was completely indifferent. She trusted so much that I'm just going to show up and I'm going to sing my song, and I trust my intention, the purity of my heart, and what I love to do is going to help. And even though the audio quality was, 30% or so what it could have been, when it was all said and done, comments were literally rolling in saying, oh my God, that changed my life. I'm in tears. Thank you so much. And that's the thing. A few things about this perfectionism. One, you don't have to be perfect. This session was far from perfect, but it was the intention, the passion, the love of singing my wife has that was stronger than the by far imperfect circumstances. And the whole irony was this. As I sort of mentioned briefly, it was a rose ceremony. Patty is like a medicine person, where she, like a plant person. She connects with the intelligence of plants. Believe it or not, she does. And that's what she was doing. She was literally channeling the consciousness, the guidance of the rose plant, who she's developed a very deep bond with, believe it or not. She really has. And the whole message of rose, each plant has their own personality, if you will, their own message. And as we know, roses are one of the most beautiful plants of all, but they have these painful thorns that you could easily get messed up with. But the idea of Rose is she's like, I love how beautiful I am, and I love my shadow. I love my imperfection. I flaunt it. Rose doesn't diminish herself. She blooms with this like boldness, and she's sporting her beauty with a shadowy, thorny trunk. So it was kind of funny that it went imperfect, and yet it was perfect all along. So right now is a phenomenal time to go forward as best you can. You might trip and fall. You might slip. You might make a mistake, but that's okay. Another thing I've learned about this is our blocks actually propel us forward. They are part of you sharing, writing, expressing. It's almost like fuel for our consciousness, fuel for our expression. So they're not to be quickly omitted, so then we can charge forward, because then we'd be like a perfect, we'd be like this saint, and there'd be no reason. We just go live in the mountain or something. There'd be no point. And I had this very powerful revelation I'll just briefly share that really showed me just how real what I just said is, for myself anyways. It was during a breathwork session a few, like 8 months ago. And what came up for me was one of my core traumas, which is a firework accident that I encountered when I was like 9 years old. I was just watching a fireworks show, and somebody lit up a huge, I was like watching a neighborhood show, and one of the guys lit up a big firework. It was so big that it literally came with its own launch tube. It came with its own freaking launch tube, and they lit it, and it tipped over and shot directly at me. All I remember was a ball of light approaching, and then I was in shock. I was out. I was rushed to the hospital. It was very bad. I spent weeks in the hospital, multiple surgeries. I still have scars to this day. And of all things that I was hoping wouldn't come up during the breathwork ceremony, guess what? The firework incident came up. And I saw just how much it impacted me, because I still to this day have kind of a detached relationship with it, where it's like I can't even really recall it all that much. And I think that's for the best, honestly. But anyway, it came up, and what came up was this super obvious insight It was like that exact moment of impact is exactly why I have all this passion. It's directly correlated. So your traumas, your blocks, your shadow is also in itself the source of what makes you beautiful, like Rose. And I just talk to so many people like you that are badasses, that really just are so talented, so conscious, and not even aware sometimes. So ready to freaking rock and roll. And now's the time to not let that perfectionism energy stop you any longer, even if it has the past. I said I could have been doing this 6 years ago. Imagine where I would be if I started what I'm doing now 6 years ago. I certainly could have, but it doesn't matter. It's all perfect. It's okay. So my point is, if you let things stop you for a while, don't quit trying. This January energy is a great time to really try again and give it another go. You'll be really strongly supported by the cosmos, strongly supported by this creative energy now present on the planet, especially for light workers like yourself who have been doing the work and clearing the space for themselves. Now it's like we are inviting in this powerful energy that just wants to express itself, but it might not be perfect, but that's okay. I think that's the main message. I had like other things written down, but that kind of like turned into something spontaneous. And I don't want to clutter it up with anything else. I think that's the main message you all needed to hear that felt like wanted to come through. Now, with that said, I'm not going anywhere, my friends. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I came on here because I wanted to connect with you because I'm coming back to YouTube and putting a lot more energy into YouTube. So I would love to hear what's going on with you. Do you have any questions? Is there anything you want help with so I can get some clarity about what to talk about? So feel free, if you have a question you want me to answer directly, take a moment and write it there in the comments section, okay? And in the meantime, I'm going to ask you guys a couple of questions. And you can keep the questions coming if you'd like, but how many of you would like to see more energy updates? Just maybe give me some ones in the comments if you want to see more energy updates. I do like full moon and new moon. Normally that's about it. I thought about doing like weekly energy updates or more just kind of spontaneous ones like this. Okay, cool. How many would you like to see more like longer, deeper content into some of my previous topics? Let's see some twos, like navigating a Kundalini awakening, spiritual awakening, dark night of the soul. Let's see some twos if you want me to go deeper with these topics. But I see a lot of ones, so that's definitely a sign that a lot of you folks want some energy, more energy updates. That's kind of what I feel right now. But okay, two, awesome, awesome, cool. Okay, I'm gonna see some questions now. Mm, a bucket. Hello, Victor. Lately, I'm trying to cope with failure. Do you have any advice in how to overcome the mentality? Yes, my friends. Failure. If you're referring to you just had a failure, failure, as sucky as it feels to fail, within it is there's like an equal proportion of energy that can move you forward in a more ideal direction. So literally what I do when I fail, initially I complain about it. I'm like whine about it and I go through my period where life sucks. And then I always ask myself, once I sort of get that out of my system, I ask myself, what can I learn from this? And I'll literally get out my notebook and I'll write down things that I've learned from this failure. And I'll tell you what, every single time, there's a lot. You can learn little, sometimes much from a success. You learn a ton when you fail at something. And what I found is that it's like I would be literally flooded with downloads of what I could do differently, how I could do it better. And I just ask, what's the message? Why the failure, higher self? What's the deal? And I would literally like brainstorm some ideas, and using those ideas, those seeds would propel me forward in a new and more expansive way to make it worth it. So the whole idea is to allow yourself to feel down when you fail, but don't stay down. It's going to be up to you to pick yourself up and say, what can I do about this? You can complain for a little while, but eventually you just become a victim. You want to not be a victim and say, what can I do? What can I learn? And then put it into action. And I'll give an example that happened to me like quite literally years ago. So as many of you know, I used to live in an RV and I sort of blindly followed my purpose on blind faith to start up this YouTube channel, but I wasn't making any money. I was not making enough money at all to support my family. And we're maxed out on credit cards. We had like, for a while, we were paying our bills with credit cards. And then we maxed out like 5 or 6 credit cards and had like nothing coming in. But I said, you know what? God is testing me. I had a plan already. I was going to launch a brand new online program. And I called it Ascension Symptom Solutions. And I thought this is going to bring me some income. Just feels meant to be. And I launched it with all this hope. I put my soul into that program and nobody wanted it. Nobody liked it, apparently. I thought it was a genius idea. Vic, no one bought it. No one cared about it whatsoever. And that was a really painful thing to accept. That, man, I felt truly lost. At that point, I was like, screw this spiritual awakening stuff. To hell with you, higher self. I don't trust you. Look what you've done to me. I'm in ruin here. And then I did that for a little while. And then I had this idea come through. And the idea was, Victor, people don't want to buy your programs. They want to work with you. And I was like, oh, really? Never thought of that. I never thought of that, as obvious as it kind of was. And that idea turned into me coaching people. And within a week, I had 40 clients. There was a hunger for it. And that week, I became financially abundant in a week, literally doing what I love, helping people like you, all, and a brand new lifestyle literally opened up for me from that painful failure. But you got to be able to look at yourself and look at and learn from it. That's the key, my friends. Okay, let's do some more here. I'm going to be not vulnerable, but Wendy Lee said, what made you stop YouTube? It's almost embarrassing to say, honestly. So if some of you have been watching me a while, I've been on YouTube for about 5 or 6 years, five years. And for about 2 or 3 of those years, I was like full on doing YouTube, right? And then, as you know, lately I've been kind of like very sparse, more infrequent uploads. And though I think that was meant to be, what honestly stopped me was my own blocks. I found within myself that the further along I get into my authenticity, into my purpose, the deeper the blocks that tend to come up. And for a time, my own blocks, they got in the way. And I shared about it in my recent full moon energy update, which if you haven't seen it, check it out. It came out very good. I talked about how I associate YouTube with being a bad father, with losing myself. And that stemmed, without getting into all these details, it stemmed from like early childhood trauma, believe it or not, that sort of just projected itself into this YouTube circumstance. There's some sort of mental, subconscious correlation or something. But my blocks were so convincing for a while that I allowed them to be translated into a belief that I'm not meant to be on YouTube. It's not right for me. It's not my path. I'm meant to do this other thing that's safer, that's more where I can control it. And that's why you have kind of seen me off and on, because there'd be glimpses of clarity where I'd see through those blocks. I'd share on YouTube, but then I'd shrink back out of fear. And that's literally what it was about. It's kind of wild. Also, that's primarily what it was about, my friend. So don't let that happen to you, because now, guess what? I used to gain like 3, sometimes 400, 500 YouTube followers a day. Now I'm I'm not really growing at all. But that's okay. But I really let my momentum with this channel completely come to a screeching halt because of my own fear, because of my own blocks. And though there's lessons to be learned, it would have been better had I not done that, obviously. So learn from my mistakes, my friends. Okay, we'll do a few more here. Appreciate you guys being on and engaging. It's really helping me see where you're all at. It's sort of in alignment with what I talked about, but I'm going to go with a different angle for my friend Jennifer here. Jennifer Maloney, could you help me identifying and facing my blocks? Deep inside, I know I'm meant to be a mentor and inspire people, but stuck in blocks of perfectionism and unworthiness. Here's what I've learned is without being too heady about the blocks, I find that one could categorize them into two different buckets. Block number one is your deep core issues, your core traumas, your unworthiness issues, your just lack of enlightenment, essentially, the illusion that you're a fragmented spirit or a fragmented being, just like the deep core stuff. The other bucket is what stops a lot of people. The other bucket is just a generalized resistance to the creative expression. And there's a lot of people talking about this. In fact, I recommend some books for you. Number one is Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, I believe her name is. Amazing book. Another one is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. They talk about this, like the generalized resistance to putting your authentic self out there to a larger degree. And what I've learned is that resistance is always there. And there are times where it's not there and you wake up and it flows. Oh, and you feel like you've broken free and it's going to be different from now on. But then it's like the next day, you're feeling insecure. You're feeling like not like yourself. It's getting harder. You're trying, you're putting focus into your dream, but it's just getting nowhere. That's the generalized resistance. And what I've learned is that you got to deal with these things in two different ways. This bucket of core wounds, what I found is it seems never ending. The shadow, the depth of the shadow, it seems like there's always more, always more, always more, always more. And I recommend taking that dive at your own pace. That was one of the things I was going to talk about actually, is like self pacing. I went through a phase where I wanted to heal all my trauma. Sounds smart. That would be nice. But what I found is that's quite an undertaking to do such a thing, to get rid of all your trauma all at once. I don't think my psyche can literally handle that degree of that process of transmutation all at one time. But I tried. So I was drinking ayahuasca left and right, doing all this stuff. And I found myself being so deep into my own shadow that I became very unbalanced. I became very, it was like too much coming up at once. It made me very, very unbalanced, is the best way I could put it. So I've learned that chip away at the core issues, yes, but listen to your body, listen to your intuition. Usually the appropriate timing and modality even will come into your life when it's time to once again take that deep dive. But give yourself a reprieve. Give yourself time to integrate and ground in. So you got to do the work, but do it in a wise way, knowing there's likely always more. Secondly, the other bucket, the resistance. It's up to you, my friend. I'm going to digress here. You all know what it's like to wake up in the flow. You're creative, you're confident, you're optimistic, everything's going beautifully, it's perfect. That is not to be relied upon, as you probably have seen. It doesn't always work out that way, does it? Some days you wake up and you're feeling horrible. Some days you wake up and you're feeling amazing. It could go both ways, but you all have the ability to put yourself in that flow. And that's what I did before coming here. I was a little nervous. I haven't done this live in a while. And I did some like Tai Chi in my backyard, some breathing, some meditation. I do things that work for me, that put me into a clearer state of awareness. I don't wing it. Every video you see of me, it's me having taken time to align myself and then coming on and sharing. So that'd be the second thing, is like, don't give your blocks too much power. They stop you if you let them stop you, as I sort of revealed recently. All right, let's see. Hmm. Someone asked if I have any tips for reading more. I would say what I learned this tip from Stephen King, and I watched my 8-year-old son Lucas do this beautifully. Stephen King, as you know, is a very prolific writer, and he felt it was very important to read a lot. And he said, but he's busy. I believe he has kids. He's kind of a busy guy, obviously. So he sips from his books. He just carries a book around with him. If he's in the bathroom or he's like on the train or what, it got a few minutes. He reads maybe a page or two. He just keeps that book with him, and it builds up this momentum. My son Lucas, believe it or not, this kid, he's 8 years old and he reads books. I swear to you, this thick, 400 pages. Harry Potter books. He's very brilliant, and he reads extraordinarily fast. My mom got him these two books for Christmas that are like adult, like not level, but like size books. He read one per day. I swear to you, he reads a book a day, this kid, literally. And he's just always got his book. He carries it. In fact, on the way to school, he's got his book. He reads it, and on the way home, he reads it. And it's just like it's a simple thing, but you gotta put energy into it. And the nice thing about that, what I found, is the more you put energy into anything, the more it builds up momentum to where it's not so forced all the time. Hmm. When I do meditate daily, I get terrifying dreams and stopped it for some time. Interesting. I would be curious, my friend, if you had a Kundalini awakening at any point. I'm reading on the topic of books right now. I'm reading this book by Gopi Krishna. It's called Living with Kundalini. And this guy had such a powerful awakening experience that he was brought to the brink of death on more than one occasion. And it got to a point where all the stuff he was doing that led up to it, all the meditation, all the yoga, he literally had to stop doing because it put him too deep, too far into an already overactive awakening experience. I'm the same way, even to this day. I had a Kundalini awakening, I don't know, like thir- well over 10 years, 10 to like 13, 14 years ago. And after that, it was the same thing. If I did too much yoga, I'd have way too much energy. I wouldn't be able to sleep. I would have like pressure and chakra pressure in my head. I'd be seeing orbs all. I was like, it was too much. And now, even to this day, I have to be kind of balanced with how deeply I invest myself into my spiritual growth. So maybe that's your sign that it's good to back off. And maybe there's also no relation. Maybe it's just kind of a coincidence, honestly. I've never heard of that, but I can see where the meditation is making you more conscious of the shadow, which may for you just present itself in the dream state. But I'll give you one last thing before I go with that question that's related to dreams. I used to see nightmares as a bad thing. Oh boy, I was must have been in a bad energy at that point, right? But I had this coach I work with once in a while. He's a double PhD. He's a real big studier of student of Carl Jung, and he's just really, really smart with interpreting dreams. And he told me this. His name is Doug. Doug told me that when you have those nightmares where you like wake up and like almost like you were in a panic, you wake up and it's like, oh my God, thank goodness that was just a dream. He said those dreams are good. Those dreams are, it's like shadow work is being done literally during the dream, where he said it's the subconscious mind purging itself of negative programs that you just experienced in the dream time. So it's like you wake up from it. It's not like you have to go back in and analyze it. It's like you were purging through that dream was in a sense a purge. So now when I have really scary nightmares, I don't see them as prophecies. I don't overanalyze them. I say, thank God that was a dream. Thank goodness I got some shadow work done without really having to do anything. So maybe that's a different perspective on your dreams, my friend. Let's see. Oh, good one. Caroline. What is your advice for keeping our heads above the water with all the fear out there right now? I feel like I'm in paddling pretty hard to stay away from it, but I still get sucked in. Tell you what, Caroline, I literally live my own little bubble. There's a lot of nuttiness going out there, but thankfully, knock on wood, I don't seem to experience much of it at all. And it has a lot to do with a couple of things. One of them is where I focus my attention. I don't watch my news. I don't even go on Instagram anymore. There's a lot of like weird shit, weird, like fearful sort of like type of stuff getting whatever. I avoid the sources of that fear energy as best I can. I also don't give it any power. For example, going into like a grocery store can be kind of an intense experience sometimes for like an empathic person. And for a while, I felt very vulnerable. Oh, the energy is so intense. Now it's like I realize my power. If I have that mentality where I feel like a victim and vulnerable to the energy, I experience that energy. And then that experience sort of justifies that limiting fear based belief. Now I believe my energy is strong enough to not be affected by that. So I go into the grocery store confident in myself, not needing to protect, more so just a subtle, quiet knowingness that as long as I stay within myself and focus, it doesn't really matter what's going on. And I don't seem to intermix with it anymore. Now, with that said, in the past, for me, it wasn't like that. I found my life situation was too embedded in the 3D, you could say. And at that point, it wasn't really, no matter what I did, I still did experience, energies you could say that I didn't prefer. But even then, I used all of that as a catalyst to upgrade my life to the point where it is now, where I have a lot more control and freedom in my life. And that took some time. But a lot of people use that same circumstance that I was in, that you might be in, as an excuse to complain, to go into fear, to play the victim. But you can use that same circumstance as a catalyst. Say, you know what? I don't like this energy. I don't like this community. I don't like this apartment complex. I don't like this job. What am I going to do about it? I'm a free spirit. I can do whatever the hell I want. I am connected to an infinite source of wisdom that can guide me out of anything. How am I going to utilize that source? For me, it was like I went on this sort of hero's journey. I followed my intuition on faith for years. And eventually it panned out to me being in a life situation that's completely ideal to me, to where I literally don't have to experience a lot of the things that most people do. But I did that. I worked towards that. And I let the bad circumstance fuel that ascent. And any of you can do as well. And honestly, the darker energy you might be in, the higher you'll probably fly. Honestly, I have this buddy from high school. His name is Chris, good old friend of mine. And as some of back in the day when I was like 19, I was a full-fledged heroin junkie, and so were a lot of my friends. One of them was Chris. Luckily, I got out of it pretty early on. Within a year or so, I got clean, and I have not, it's not been an issue ever since like my late teens. My friend Chris, however, and many others, he went down very, very deep for over a decade, in and out of rehab, in and out of jail, living on the streets. He really got sucked into the darkness in a very, very a way that I don't even want to think about. But yeah, I just saw my buddy. He reached out to me. He's going through a spiritual awakening, by the way. He watches my videos, and he's clean. He's out of the system. He just had this moment where he was out of the system, he said, where he's no longer on probation. He's like a free, normal guy now. And he said he had this moment where, so beautiful, because he's such a good friend of mine, where he went outside and he was looking out at the stars, and he said he felt, for the first time in his life, connected to like God. He said, the way he put it, and he just felt this he felt this connection and an awareness of his life purpose. And he told me all this. I was like, Chris, bro, because you went down so far, so deep, so dark, you'll have more to offer than most people. So it's all about your perspective about the energies and what's going on. You can bounce off of anything in a positive way. That's my 2 cents anyway. We'll do a few more. I'm really having a good time. Honestly, thank you for the donations, guys. Honestly, I didn't even know that was even available. It's not my intent for coming on, but it's very nice of you. Uh, let's see. Ha! Okay. This one won't apply to everybody, but you parents might appreciate this from our friend Jess. How do you stay present with kids and family members when they have another way of Yeah. So Jen basically asked, how do you stay present while having kids? Now, this could also be what I'm going to say will also apply to how do you stay present when you're in a situation or circumstance where there's outside influences that seem to be strong enough to knock you off your square. So, specifically with kids, I dropped that expectation long ago of staying present. I don't stay present. I don't stay zenned out. As a matter, I could do a half hour of meditation and in 5 minutes, 5 seconds sometimes, the energy of my three kids can get me out of it. So honestly, what helped me is not being so hard on myself, not trying to stay present. I do my best, but I accept the fact that I don't. I don't always stay present. Um, that my coach, Doug, he says, Victor, do you know how much I'm balanced throughout the whole year? I said, how much, Doug? He's a pretty balanced guy. He's like, he's really got a good thing going for himself. I said, how long? He said, about 5 seconds. I said, 5 seconds? He said, there's no such thing as balance. He said, all we can do is, it's like there's always balancing. There's always balancing. So I'm always trying to learn from my circumstances. I'm doing my best to stay balanced, but even sometimes doing my best to stay balanced, like our buddy with the dreams, that can even become imbalanced, where I'm just meditating all the time, and then I'm too sensitive, and then I'm sort of setting myself up to be spoiled and disappointed with the energies around me. So my advice to you as a parent, from a parent to a parent, is do your best. That's all you can do. All right, we'll do a couple more. I really am having a good time with you guys, and I appreciate you all. Let's see. Let's see. Sorry, I'm not seeing it stand up to me. Give me a moment, my friends. I'm trying to find something. Let's see. Okay. Spiritual gorilla. How can you discern between our intuition and our old ego patterning? What I've learned is that it can be confusing sometimes. Sometimes it is very difficult to assess. And what I shared earlier about, like, I have not been on YouTube really for years, for like 2 years, the way I normally would, because my blocks, my programming, you could say, was so compelling. And I was doing my best. I mistook the fear as guidance. However, I can give you some tips, but I think you probably already know them. Is what I found, and this is like me doing that for those 2 years was literally contradicting my own advice I give to people, and that is, Your spirit, your intuition, your higher self is never going to guide you with fear. Oh, you better watch it. It's not. An example would be, maybe there's like a bad car, maybe there's like a potential to get into a bad car accident and you're driving. Your higher self, instead of saying, you better stop, you better go home, it's going to say, hey, your eyes might catch a street sign and there might be a beautiful home, and you'll think, I wonder what's this way. You just sort of gravitate towards X, it's calling to you, and you find yourself just sort of naturally going a different route. And then like you avoided this disaster, but you were guided with excitement, with resonance, with a feeling of like compatible energy. So that's, generally speaking, probably the biggest distinction between fear and like the spirit is going to give you excitement, and it'll feel expansive, something. Now, what can happen, this is what happens to a lot of us, is usually there's a pairing that happens. You might have, for example, maybe you go through a lot of shadow work and you integrate, and all of a sudden, like these downloads start coming, these ideas. And as they're coming, they feel expansive. They feel like, this is me. This is what I could do. This feels amazing. But oftentimes, that higher frequency, expansive energy, in addition to sort of trying to move you forward, it will bring up deeper levels of your fear and of your shadow, of your doubt. So it can be like, wow, wow, wow. Oh. And it can be like this sort of push and pull sort of scenario. But a helpful tool to help you discern whether it's intuition or fear is to talk it out. Or just to write it down on paper. I literally did this just 2 days ago with my wife, because I started putting more energy into YouTube and I started getting all afraid. And I started, those blocks came up. But instead of listening to them, I talked to my wife about them. And as I was talking to her about them, I felt myself, I realized how fearful my concerns were and how they were coming from a place, I could just feel the energy coming as I was discussing them, as very clearly coming from a place of unexamined, illogical fear. But if we let that fear fester, our mind does have the ability to make sense of it and justify it, and therefore let it weigh us down. But sometimes I'll express my concerns, and my wife will give me a look like, really? And I can just tell, sometimes the look on her face is enough for me to realize I'm coming off in a very off sort of way. So getting your fears out in the open to where they can be examined with good old-fashioned human logic can go a long way. We'll do this one from Prodavaka Divu. I know I butchered your name. I'm sorry. I'm bad with names, but you have a good question. Nothing is happening in my life, and it's been that way for a good 2 years. I feel like I'm, it's kind of wasting my life. She just feels sort of stuck, like too much time has passed before something has happened. Again, I keep referencing this book. I'm going to actually make a video about it pretty soon, about Gopi Krishna and his classic Kundalini awakening. And this guy like documented in this book, autobiography, like a long span of this awakening. And he would have it where it'd be like the same theme, the same pattern of him just basically, at that time, he was just dealing with the physical ramifications and feeling sick and insomnia. And his body was almost like going to give out. But he would spend like years, sometimes years in that state. And by then he was like, he thought he had fried his nervous system with the Kundalini. He thought this spiritual awakening was just going nowhere. Like he made a mistake somewhere. He's been stuck too long. What am I doing wrong? Right? And this happened to him kind of this up and down for about 10, 15 years. And at the end of his journey, he found himself, it's almost like you almost got to read the book to really accurately depict just how enlightened this guy became. The way he sees the world, he sees just love and consciousness and vibrancy everywhere. He had the ability to where he had to stop himself from literally just sinking into bliss and love and expansiveness. He could just be content all his life engulfed in God's radiant energy. He became so enlightened that it almost became a matter of balancing it. But that's to contrast those years where we felt like nothing was going on. Your awakening has an intelligence. It's a biological evolutionary process driven not by the mind, but by an intelligence that we can only speculate about. And it's hard to trust at times because there can be a long time where like nothing's happening. I've had that too. You feel like I've been stuck here for a long time. Nothing's changed. Little peaks and valleys here and there, but things do change when it's time. And what I've learned now is luckily my experience has proven this to me. So trusting is much easier, but maybe you can get something out of that, what I just shared, that the same thing happened to me. The same thing happened to me. I had my spiritual awakening, and probably 10 years later, I found myself finally in a place of like abundance and where I was like in a good career and like finding my purpose and finding my soul family. And prior to that, there's a lot of ups and downs, a lot of interesting things that happened, but no real sign of where this was worth it. But now where I'm at now, it's I couldn't even imagine my life being so good. And it's nothing I could have planned. It's something that just had to unfold. And I can look back and I can see every little moment of experience had its place. Even the times where I thought nothing was happening, something was happening. And what I believe is sort of what Gopi Krishna confirms, that it just takes your body time to learn how to house and assimilate all that energy. Okay, my friends, I think I'm going to go. I can find myself getting kind of tired, but I want you to know I really enjoyed speaking with you, and I thank you so much for coming on. I had a great time. I'll stay for one more question. One more question. I don't want to go. One more question, my friends. Let's see if I can find a good one. Let's see. Who's got a question? Let's see. I'll finish this one with Chris Curls. I'm sure we can all relate. And then I'm gonna go. How does a person deal with negative people or relationships going through a spiritual awakening? Can anybody relate to that? Honestly, there's no black and white answer, but what I can say is usually one of two things happens. One of two positive things can result from really challenging relationships. One, it's like clarity about who you're attracting in your life. Why? They didn't just come here to pick on you. God didn't send them to mess with you. You attracted them. You synced up your frequency with them. That even that narcissistic, challenging personality, they're a manifestation of you. So that begs the question, why? Why? What is unresolved in you that would link you up to this person? And when you can start taking responsibility for attracting these negative characters into your reality, that's when you can learn these soul lessons. Honestly, they're probably a soulmate of yours that came down to trigger the crap out of you, to be this particular frequency, this particular personality to drive you bananas and teach you some type of valuable soul lesson. You got to own it. Now, sometimes what can happen is it's a message. Another way of looking at it, sometimes it's a message of why are you putting up with that? Why are they in your life? If you don't want someone in your life, boot them out. Remove yourself. You have that power. Most of the time, not always. And if you can't get them away from you, you're stuck. Sometimes you're not really stuck, you just think you are, but sometimes you are truly stuck. And when that's the case, it's because there's something you have not learned yet. And once you learn that lesson, life will make a way for you to depart from that circumstance. So you really, all these things, you never want to play the victim. You never want to feel like I'm powerless. These people, they keep doing this to me, the collective energy, the government, my boss. No, remember your power. Remember you can learn and bounce off of and grow and expand and ascend from anything, especially those troublesome relationships. And oftentimes what happens is when you learn the soul lesson with that challenging relationship, it's like the exact lesson you need to help you finally attract the person or people you're really meant to be with. That will be like amazing. That'll be a huge contrast from what you're presently dealing with. So that's how I would answer that, my friends. Thank you all. Thank you all again for the donations. I've never had donations come to me in these live videos, but those of you who donated, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Very cool of you. But I will be back, my friends. Thank you for your contribution and the ideas for the future of my YouTube channel. I'll be seeing you very soon. Much love to each and every one of you. Peace.